The three things that really distinguish Grameen Foundation, three unique contributions, I must say, that Grameen has had ever since Grameen Foundation was established and it started working globally. So one is its focus on data and evidence and insights to create impact. And one of the most transformative things that Grameen did way back in 2005-06 was to come up with an index called Progress Out of Poverty Index, PPI in short, which was used as a low-cost measurement tool for measuring the poverty level of the clients of any microfinance, micro-enterprise development programs, because that was really important. It was kind of a question as to what extent these programs really impact low-income people or poorest of the poor people. So that shows the focus on data and evidence for creating impact. The second distinguishing feature of Grameen's work is around leveraging digital platforms and digital technology for creating impact in different spaces. We have tried that in the space of financial inclusion. We have done that in the space of agriculture, promoting various kind of digital agriculture technologies, platforms, etc., as well as in the space of health and nutrition. And also, working with different kinds of innovative business models and financing models. Who do we wish to impact as an organization? So there are three kind of typical customer persona profiles that we define. One is a low-income individual, especially women. So they are like prime focus for our work. Second is smallholder farmers. And third is micro and small businesses, micro enterprise. Each of these segments, suffer from some common problems of lack of access to information, lack of convenient access to appropriate, affordable products and services. And of course, even if the products and services are there, how do you access them? They lack the trust and confidence, and they find the systems to access these products and services too protracted, right? In fact, as I was listening to the presentation by Mr. Daya from IM, I was just saying that so many things are happening, such wonderful things, technologies being developed, machinery being developed, and all of that. But if we go out in the marketplace and try to see, okay, where do we see those products really impacting or reaching the last mile customer, and that's where we find a gap, right? So I think, we all need to think slightly, taking a systemic view, not just from motivating the primary producers, the farmers, as to you need to produce these kind of crops and the economics of that, and make sure that the farmer has access to the input system, whether it is seeds or fertilizers or right kind of fertilizers, vermicompost or whatever, and logistics and transportation and warehousing, so that it kind of makes its way from farm gate to the processors and finally to the retailers and to the end consumer. So that systemic view is very critical. So as a result, there are some data points I've given. That primarily it's, when you think about the perspective of the low-income person or smallholder farmers or the small businesses, they all, suffer with this common problem of lack of awareness, lack of access, lack of, convenience and affordability of various products and services which inhibit them from improving their lives. Now, that was kind of, a slightly, broader background and on overview about Grameen Foundation. Within the space of agriculture, we work with almost 55 farmer producer organizations, largely in Eastern UP, but now we are also starting to work with FPOs in the state of Maharashtra. We focus a lot on capacity building of these farmer producer organizations, on their assessment of their capacity, their training needs assessment, helping them develop their capacity development plans, business plans, enabling, market expansion, supporting their credit linkages and market linkages for various commodities that the farmers produce, promoting nutri-sensitive agriculture. So in the current Rabi season, like we promoted this biofortified zinc wheat, for example. So almost 1,600 farmers kind of cultivated that WB02 kind of wheat. We also kind of trying to promote climate smart agricultural practice, what kind of practices you can have, so that it leads to less water usage, less water intensive, or less energy uses, or renewable energy kind of uses. Technology enablement, how smallholder farmers can access different kinds of technology, whether it is digital technology or ag tech farm kind of technology that they need. Since morning, of course, we have heard a lot about the benefits of the millet and different kinds of things. So I'll not go into these details of millet or their advantages. We know that they are like superfood. They are like super good in terms of their nutritional value. They are climate sensitive because they are less water intensive, and they can be grown in semi-arid, dry-land kind of conditions without irrigation and all of that. So all of that. One thing which I discovered is that when you talk about the economics of agri-value chains, and especially from the perspective of the primary producer, one of the biggest challenges we always talk about is that the primary producers do not get a fair share of the consumer prices. And between the primary producer and consumer, it's the middlemen and other people who kind of take away a lot of that. And data on different commodities will show you that the primary producer realization of the consumer prices ranges from 28% to 70% for different commodities. In case of bajra, incidentally, I saw that it is as high as 81%. Now that's of course indicative of two things. One thing is that bajra is good from the perspective of primary producer, that middlemen are not eating away the larger share of the consumer prices. The downside is that maybe there is not much of post-production processing or value addition is happening, which means that whatever the farmer is selling or in whatever format is, that's how the consumers are consuming it. That's why you find that primary producers getting a higher share of the consumer prices. When that bajra gets processed, for example, then you see that the primary producer realization comes down to 40 to 45%. So that shows you that basically our primary producer, the farmers, are not engaging in any processing activity. And of course, they do not have the capacity to do that. If somebody else will have the technology and capacity and capital to do that, who can do that? Often it's the traders and middlemen who kind of engage in those things, and they take the difference between 45% and the balance 100. But now we have in our country an opportunity that a large number of these farmer producer organizations are being set up. So government has the central sector scheme of 10,000 FPOs being promoted in different parts of the country. And I mentioned that we do work with a large number of FPOs, and we did a kind of landscape study with about 90 FPOs in Eastern UP, and I'll share some interesting data points from there. So for identification of different value chains for our interventions, we did a value chain study across 160 villages in Eastern UP, 10 districts. To identify which are the crops being grown in these 10 districts. We identified a long list of 65 crops. And then we said, okay, if we really have to intervene, we cannot intervene in all 65 crops. We have to apply some kind of filtering as to where we can intervene. So we applied the lens of, where there is, opportunity for price realization, and there's, adequate volume. And then we looked at, various criteria for growth potential, like product availability, the risk, low risk of selling, low risk of pest and disease, ease of cultivation, scope for value addition, scope for organic or residue-free cultivation, advantages or uniqueness, scope for improvement in quality and productivity, scope for storage. So that brought down the list from 65 to 26 commodities. That did not incidentally include any of the millets. So all the, we in the list of 65, we did have bajra in that. It was being cultivated in 3 out of the 40 FPOs that we are working with. But the volume was too small. In fact, in this value chain study, I think I have the number somewhere. Yeah.
Can you please sum up, because let's focus on the millet value chain instead of talking about the corporate transmission. This is a focus program. So let's focus on millet value chain.
Okay.
Instead of hanging around. Because this is a
Sure.
specific program.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. So, in this value chain study, we found that there were out of the 40 FPOs, there were only 3 FPOs where they had 760 farmers that were engaged in cultivation of pearl millet, right? And the overall volume that they had was 226 tons, which was like too small for the cultivation, right? The other thing is that when we looked at the potential of engaging the FPOs in this activity of value chain, strengthening value chain of millets, the capital base of most of these FPOs were too small. We surveyed like 89 of these FPOs, and majority of them, in fact only 10 of them, had a capital base of most of them had paid up capital of only 5 to 7.5 lakhs. And membership base of most of them was like below 500. Very few, like half of them had membership base above 500. Which means that if the FPOs have to engage in supporting the farmers in let's say aggregation processing, then they neither have the volume, nor do they have the capital for undertaking these activities. So there is opportunities for improving this value chains by doing things at the stage of things like at seed production, engaging of farmers in like seed production, because right now farmers are depending a lot on seeds from private seed companies. They're also kind of applying too much seed, so which leads to more higher cost of cultivation in case of bajra. And then there is post harvest things where there is room for improvement in case of trying to reduce or minimize your losses. Things like moisture control, pest, and at the storage time you need better storage facilities. So those interventions are needed, which can